Alright, this is Chat UTD and my reaction to another home defeat for Manchester United, this time against Crystal Palace. It adds to a catalogue of home defeats in the last couple of months. We have lost to Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Brighton and now Crystal Palace. And as the Palace fans alluded to with the song they were singing in the second half yesterday about getting another 3 points at Old Trafford, it's just become the norm that teams come to Old Trafford and win. After the Brighton game, I said I'm not shocked. I was just finding it unfathomable that we're at this point, and it's a similar position after yesterday. I'm not shocked. It was a result I predicted. You just knew after the chinks of light of the previous 3 games, albeit 2 of them being in the Europa League, you just knew United would lose yesterday. I have no doubt in my mind, really, that we'd lose. You've always got that hope that you're going to be wrong. But Palace come to Old Trafford and probably are favourites, and that's the state that the club is in at the moment. We've had so many bad performances and bad results at Old Trafford, not just this season, to be fair. It's been a problem for a while. I think Old Trafford swallows you up when you're not doing very well, and that's certainly the case with our players. I don't think they're not trying. I don't think they lack endeavour. It just looks broken to me, and I don't want to sound defeatist, but I don't think it particularly matters what the system is, the personnel, as in who he drafts in from the squad, who he gets rid of. It just seems to be the same, because I think the culture of the whole club is broken. And what we're seeing this season is as bad as it gets. I saw a statistic yesterday which I find stunning. We failed to score in the first half in 18 of 24 games. Now, if my maths is right, that's 3/4 of the games we've played this season we failed to score in the first half. Now, that's a massive problem, because if you score, especially if you score the first goal, especially at Old Trafford, the whole atmosphere changes. The team will be more confident and more relaxed. The other team has pressure on them. They have to open up and come at you, which leaves gaps for counter-attacks. But we're not scoring. Well, we're not scoring first often enough. I'd love to know the statistic for how many times we've scored first this season. But to not score in the first half on 18 occasions out of 24 is mind-blowing. We've got 29 points out of 24 games, so we're averaging a little more than 1 point per game. The season in the league is over. I think we're 12 points clear of the relegation zone, and we are 11 behind 6th. It's going to take a run of monumental proportions for United to even get in the top 8. We haven't won back-to-back games this season in the league. 24 games in. We're 13th. Amorim said a couple of weeks ago, we're probably the worst Man United team in history. There's no doubt it's the worst Premier League Man United team. Excuse me, but I go back to when I first started watching the team in the late 80s. And I remember going, obviously, with my dad and listening to conversations of the older people that were around and seeing it with my own eyes. This was a really average Man United team. The club hadn't won the league for 20 odd years at that point, and it was largely accepted United are a mid-table average team. This is worse. I never thought I'd see that again as an adult after the Ferguson years. This is worse than that. And that's going to be borne out by the points total we get at the end of the season. To make any impression on the top half of the table, we probably need to go on a run where we win 6 games out of 8 or something like that. And right now, it'd be a brave person to predict that's going to happen. We need to do what Chelsea did last season. Chelsea were in mid-table at this sort of stage of the season. The season was just a real damp squib. It looked like it was just limping to a finish. And something seemed to click and they went on a good run. And I obviously think Chelsea fans were a bit shocked that they sacked Pochettino. That's a different story. But I think they ended up finishing 6th. But they went on an incredible run to be able to do that from nowhere. Now, maybe, I'm going to come back to the system a little bit later, maybe if he keeps persevering with it and we keep working on it, that something will click. But there's no signs of that at the moment. And this just feels the same as it's felt over the last few years in general. Nothing's really changed. When Amorim came in, I was pleased for many different reasons, but one of the big things I said was they haven't just written the season off by giving it to an interim and having it as dead time. In October, they've gone and acted. I know he came in November. They've headhunted a top young coach, sought after by quite a few clubs, one of the best up-and-coming coaches in Europe, and they've brought him in now. And the aim had to have been to make a transformative difference to the team to save something from our season. It wasn't just to figure out systems and siphon out players who are not going to fit that system. It was also to be able to finish, I would guess, top 6. I think that probably was a remit of sorts. And certainly to start seeing progression in the way that we play. Now, I'm still glad he came in, because if he hadn't have come in, then, and he came in the summer, then by the summer, Rashford would still be here. And then the assessment period of Amorim looking at the players becomes July, August, and then the first part of next season. And the earliest a player like Rashford would go would be January of next year. I'm just using him as an example. There's others, of course. What we're seeing now is Amorim's playing in real games with things on the line, and he's seeing it for himself so that he can make those decisions earlier. And the housekeeping he's done and the standard bearing he's done has been really, really promising. But in terms of that coming in and imposing your style on the team, seeing if they can play it, and winning games, he's made no impact whatsoever. It's been, if anything, I would guess, the record is worse than it was under Ten Hag. So I wanted Amorim in because I didn't want the season to be written off. It's written off anyway. It goes back to, it doesn't seem to matter what we do. We get the same results anyway. Leon, you asked me in a message yesterday, at what point do we start questioning the system and acknowledging that he hasn't got the players to do it? I think the problem with changing now is multi-layered. If he says now, right lads, just for some respite, we're going to go back to playing 4 at the back, we're going to go back to 4-2-3-1, or even 4-4-2 or whatever. The problem is, I think you've worked painstakingly to try and see if this can work, and you're still part way through that process, but you're too far in. There's 3 months into that process. If you renegade on it now and let them go back to what they feel comfortable with, yeah, they'll start to pick up a couple of results here or there, but within 2 or 3 weeks, we're back to where we are now, guaranteed. So you're not going to get sustainable good results because of it. And also what that tells the players is he's given up on it once, so he might give up on it again. In the summer, when he then says, right, we're going to go back to the 3-4-3. Remember when I first came in for the first 3 months, we were doing 3-4-3. Well, that's what we're going back to. They're thinking, well, no, we're comfortable with 4 at the back. You've given up on it once. You're probably going to give up on it again if we kick up enough of a stink about it. And also, you're trying to get them to go back to something after feeling comfortable. I just don't think it's going to work. I think he's locked into it now. I always look at risk and reward. The risk of changing it is what I just said there. The reward is minimal, because I don't think we're going to win games anyway, because it's the same players. The truth is, systems and formations are important in football, but the fundamentals and the basics of football are that you have to have players, and I'm repeating myself, that have the quality first and foremost, but then the psychological, physical, mental and emotional capability and wherewithal and resilience and robustness to play for a club like Manchester United. And we don't have enough of those players. And you can play whatever system you want. I don't think that's going to make that much difference. In further messages, Leon, you added that, but maybe he could be more pragmatic within that system. I agree with that. I think perhaps he could play to protect a little bit more our weaknesses, to protect our weaknesses a bit more. But I don't know. I wouldn't change the system now. And if I think about risk and reward with keeping the system, I think the risk is we're going to keep losing games. We're going to keep losing games anyway. The reward is potentially that he gets crystal clear clarity on what players can do and what they can't do and what we need in the summer. It could be quite a stark reality and stark clarity that we get, but nonetheless it could be clarity, and that's important. And best case scenario, if he keeps playing it and keeps playing it and keeps playing it, something clicks. I don't think that'll happen. As I said, I think whatever we do, I just don't see a transformative difference happening this season. And with the money available, to be honest with you, I don't think we've got that much of a chance of making transformative difference moving forward next season or beyond that either. Which brings me to my next point, and it relates to something I spoke about last week about young players. I think the only way United move forward, and not just short term, and I'll come back to short term in a minute, but longer term, with the lack of finances we've got, is we have to build around youth. Because United aren't winning titles under this ownership model anyway. They're not. The ceiling as to what we can do under this ownership model is probably about 6th, and cup runs with that. Because we're skint, and our starting position is so bad, the damage that's been done to the club is so vast, and where we need to get to is so far away, and we haven't got the wherewithal to make that jump, and it's too big a jump anyway. So if we're watching a team whose ceiling is finishing 6th, I'd rather watch a team that is littered with young players who we're trying to develop and that we can get behind. And whether it's right or wrong, anyone watching this knows as well as I do that United fans will always get behind young players and forgive them more than senior players. And there's something about, if collectively you've not got a great team, but you're watching individuals being cultivated and grow as players and progress, there's something really, really nice about that. There's something rewarding about watching a young player get better and better and better. And I know I often hark back to when I first started watching United, but I'm going to do it again. I go back to Lee Sharp. We signed him in 1988 from Torquay. I'm pretty sure it was his debut against West Ham. I was there. He played left back. You've got this lanky left back, skinny as anything, really raw, come from Torquay. Everyone's a bit intrigued about him, but thinking this is a bit left field. 2 years later, he's scoring a hat-trick away at Arsenal in the Rumbelows Cup, doing the dance that he does, and he's on the way to becoming a cult hero. Now, United over those years, we won some trophies, fine. We won the FA Cup, we won the Cup Winners' Cup. But that point when we were in the Rumbelows Cup and he scored that hat-trick, we'd won the FA Cup the season before, but we were an average team. But you're watching a young lad grow and develop and get better. There are those stories out there. People talk about Class of 92 and Busby Babes. They're exceptional. There's lots of times where we've had maybe bad spells, but young players have come through, and United fans celebrate those young players and watch them develop. Sharp's the one that springs to mind for me, but I'm sure there's many others. And I would identify with a team that's young and that is at least fighting for the cause, and at least we're seeing progress in individuals if we're not seeing massive progress collectively. There's some that would say you can't throw young in the immediate short term. You can't throw youngsters into this. This is a really difficult situation to throw young players into, and there's no precedent for that. There is precedent for it. I remember people again only ever talk about the class of '92 and the Busby Babes as if they're the only two sets of young players we've ever had in our history. It's just not true. I remember again, I think it was 1988, that sort of era. We were again bang average, not doing very well. Fergie's fledglings, as it was known. He just threw in Daniel Graham, Tony Gill, Russell Beardsmore, Mark Robbins. There was others as well. He threw in quite a few, and the fans, although the team wasn't doing particularly well, were lifted by that. Van Gaal, as much as I can't stand his time at United, or couldn't stand his time at United, he was good at it. If we had an injury, he just picked the player that was in the youth system and put them in that position. Borthwick Jackson is one that springs to mind. Paddy McNair, just chuck them in there and cultivate them, coach them, and United fans would always get behind that. So I think the season is, as I say, is a write-off anyway. So short term, I would start bringing in a few of the younger players, not just the ones that are already around the squad anyway, like Collier and Mainu and Garnacho, who two of those are established first team players anyway. Maybe some of the ones I mentioned in my last video. I want to talk about the Europa League because I think it's critical now to our season. We're straight into the last 16. We don't need to go through a playoff. And I believe our opponents could be one of Galatasaray, Midtjylland from Belgium, Real Sociedad or Alkmaar. Of those, I would prefer either Alkmaar or Midtjylland. Probably prefer not to play Galatasaray. Their fans are thugs. They call it passion, I call it thuggery. And I think the whole dynamics around that tie would be something I'd rather avoid. They beat us at Old Trafford last season in the Champions League, and then we drew away, so they probably have our number on the pitch as well. But if we had to play them, I still think we've got a chance against them. So of those four teams, none of them strike fear into you in terms of what they could do on the pitch, at least. If you get over those two legs, you're in the quarterfinals. And I don't know about you, but if we get to a quarterfinal of a competition, my eyes start lighting up and I think, we've got a chance here. Now, some United fans used to be snobby about the Europa League. This is our level. In fact, it's probably above our level. On merit, we should be in the Conference League. But because we won the FA Cup, we ended up going into the Europa League. On merit, we shouldn't be in Europe at all, probably, based on our performances last season and this season. But this is where we're at. My lad said to me on Thursday night, if we win the Europa League, Dad, we'll be in the Champions League next year. And he was dead excited about it. And I don't want to burst his bubble, but financially, it would be fantastic for the club. And you get to play the likes of Bayern Munich and Real Madrid and the heavyweights of Europe again. But on the pitch, I don't think it'd be good for this team at all. Because we're not good enough to compete. So well and good going, we've got Barcelona or Real Madrid or like Bayern Munich, and then we get slapped all over the park. We're a long way off winning the Europa. We probably won't have to worry about it, to be honest with you. But this is our level. At least with the Europa League, it's a level playing field. We've got a chance to compete against the teams we're playing against. And I looked at it. Porto and Roma play each other in the knockout playoff thing. So one of them's going out. I would say those two teams would worry me a little bit, but there's only one of them going to be left in it. And then Bilbao. And the final's been held in Bilbao. They're the teams that I would say would come into it probably as favourites against United. Now, we've just lost at home against Crystal Palace. I'm not saying we're going to be big favourites against against the teams that are left in it, but Ajax are in it, Lazio are in it. There's good teams in it, but there's no one I think that we're inferior to and that on our day we can't beat. I'm just going to go back again to 90 to 91 when we played in the Cup Winners' Cup, and it was the first season in Europe after the Scousers had ruined it for 5 years with their hooliganism and the English clubs had been banned. And when the Cup Winners' Cup, and we played Pesky Munkas from Hungary, then Wrexham, then Legia Warsaw, or they might have been the semi-final, then Montpellier. I might have got that the wrong way around, but those are the two teams we played. And then in the final, of course, Barcelona, who are a huge club. But on the run, no United fans were going, oh, this is a joke. We're playing Pesky Munkas and Legia Warsaw and Wrexham. Who are they? This is where we are. You walk before you run. And that season, when we won that trophy, was massive for United. And it was massive for Ferguson on the back of winning the FA Cup the season before. So the Europa League's far better than that Cup Winners' Cup. If we can even get to the latter stages of it, I think it gives the fans something to be invested in. And I think it gives Amorim something that he can say, look, we've done something. I've made some impact. One of the issues, of course, we've got is because the league season's pretty much over. If he does keep playing the normal senior squad members in the league, I think their motivation levels are going to be low because they know they can't achieve anything. And then can you just flick a switch in Europe and turn it on? Do you almost use the league as tune-up games for the Europa League? Are we good enough to do that? Can the players do that? I don't know. That's a concern. But the Europa League is massively important to United this season. And I know we've just had a really poor result. I think on our day, we can beat any of the teams that are in it, and it could be the salvation of our season because the league is done. Just on to the last day of the transfer window, which is today. I assume it shuts tonight. We desperately need a striker. And everyone we're being linked to seems to be a forward rather than a striker. And there is a difference. A forward, someone who maybe plays across the front three positions, maybe a wide forward. We need a proper striker. We needed a proper striker in the summer. We still need one now. Don't know why United think that they can... what's the word? Defeat the law of averages and do things on the cheap that no one else has ever been successful doing, but we're going to buck the trend and do it. I said in the summer when we bought Xerxes, I wasn't opposed to the profile of player that he is, but I was quite surprised that with Højlund at his age as our striker, we've gone and bought a striker of pretty much, not in terms of playing style, but background, pretty much exactly the same profile. Young, untried in let's call it a big league. Played for an underdog team in Serie A, had a good season, not prolific, no record of scoring loads of goals. I was surprised we didn't get a senior player, a more experienced player. But United thought they could buck the trend and that would work. It was never going to work then, and it's not going to work now. United need a proper striker. Your issue is we have a few hours now to try and find a out-and-out striker, of which in European football there's a dearth of those these days. So an out-and-out striker who's pretty good, who isn't wanted by his club and can come on loan to our club. I mean, it's pretty specific and it's highly unlikely to happen that we're going to find someone like that. So if we end up with anyone, it will be an underwhelming option. And we've had months to be working on this because anyone that knows anything about football would watch us and say we need a striker, a proper striker. And you can talk about lack of chances being created for the strikers. We don't have anyone who holds themselves with any presence, who makes dynamic runs, who looks like they believe they can score goals. Whether there's service there or not, we need someone like that. Maybe we need someone who can create goals for themselves because we don't create enough chances. But you've got Bruno Fernandes, who in 2024 created more chances than any other Premier League player. So we must be creating some chances. And Xerxes and Højlund, well, speaks volumes, doesn't it? Mainu played up front yesterday. That's how much Amorim believes in them. I really hope that Garnacho doesn't go, because there's talk now that Chelsea are going to put a last minute bid in for him. I think we need to hold on to him. Symbolically, if not for any other reason, in that you don't sell young players that are yet to fulfil their potential, and that I would want at least another few months of Amorim with Garnacho to see what he's made of. And it would be a fire sale, and it would be because we're skint, and that's why I'm so opposed to that. And finally, save the best to last. Rashford has gone to Aston Villa on loan. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. Why wasn't it done 4 years ago? But anyway, I'm just delighted he's gone. It was untenable. He couldn't stay at the club. It would have been so difficult for Amorim, because you've got a player on silly money who hasn't played for 6 or 7 weeks, who then you have to reintroduce into the squad, because there's no way he can sit there doing nothing for the next however many months until the summer. So I said before about Amorim not making much impact. The one thing that he's made massive impact on is that he's the only one who's called out Rashford and had the balls to see it through, and I think pushed probably for this as well. That I think he's insisted he has to go. I just hope that they take up the £40 million option and buy him. I don't want him back at Old Trafford. It's finished. I don't care what he does at Villa. I don't care how many goals he scores, which I don't think he'll do that well. I have no fear this will come back and bite us in the arse. I have absolute conviction that it's right for him to never play for Man United again. Just like exactly the same as I thought with Jadon Sancho. There is no fear that this is going to come back and bite us. But I suppose selfishly, I want him to do half decent for Villa, so they buy him. But his career at Manchester United is finished, and it should have been finished a long time ago. The team we've got is not good enough. But what Amorim's doing is siphoning out the ones that he knows 100% are not going to keep to his standards and even do the bare minimum. And it's so important that those players go so they don't infiltrate the ones that are already struggling, but maybe have a decent attitude and are trying their best. You're never going to build if then you throw a grenade like Rashford back in there. So we don't have that worry anymore, at least for the next few months. And I'm just glad it's done. Fantastic news. Be a massive bonus if he can move Casemiro on as well today. But is that likely to happen? Probably not. The long and short of it is the club is in a complete and utter mess. Should have said before, Martinez out for the season is a massive blow. He's the one that comes with aggression. He's played pretty well this season. I think his ability to pass through the lines and start attacks is underrated. I think he's good at that. He has a presence in the team. He has an influence on those around him, which is positive. He's a left-sided centre-back, of which we only have one. The only silver lining, I think, is that maybe Aidan Heaven might start to get some game time now. I mentioned the youth before. Hopefully he does get some time on the pitch. I say hopefully. I don't know how good he is, but it'd be good to see, wouldn't it? And hopefully this gives him a chance. But that's a big blow. And I should have mentioned that earlier, really. But the whole we'll be here every other week. We'll be having these conversations. It's not going to get bad enough to go down. It's not going to improve enough to make an impression on the table. So everything for me is on the Europa and the FA Cup. Bring on Friday and Rude. I'll probably do another video actually later on today, because we do have the transfer window. Let's see if anything happens. Should I get my yellow tie out? Glazers out.